Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. Today's topic we are looking at is the connecting habits. We talked about the disconnecting habits yesterday in looking at Dr. Glasser's how to get along with people and so forth. He qualified for us or came out with the ultimate question. If we would continually be asking ourselves, is what I'm doing, is what I'm thinking about doing, is it bringing us closer together or is it driving us further apart? And then Dr. Glasser isolated 7 habits that we as human beings have a tendency to fall into that really breaks apart and disconnects us with other people. And then he also isolated 7 character qualities that we as human beings on occasion fall into, of being kind and being connecting. And the more we can be aware of these, and whenever we're falling into the good portions where we're connecting with one another, to kind of give ourselves a pat on the back and, yeah, I want to continue this. But where we are becoming disconnecting and then eventually even falling into the deadly patterns, where we are breaking apart and isolating and separating. So anyway, we're going to be talking today about how to connect with. So Sue, you want to bring those up and
do that.
We'll start out by looking what they are. And what I would like is that maybe giving, as we'll look at them one-on-one, and then together later we will begin looking at how that there was something there that spurred you to own that connecting habit that has now become just a natural part of who you are. So there are the 7: respecting, encouraging, negotiating differences. Let's see if we can settle this. Trusting, accepting, listening, and supporting. So now we'll go back and work with them one-on-one. And we'll start with respecting. What does it mean to respect something? How is a visual way? And just giving a brief suggestion as to how respecting someone affects you.
Sometimes it's difficult to respect somebody who you really don't disagree with, or somebody who you really think is foolish or really think is incredible. You know, you want to, and it's funny because respecting, it kind of like overlays the other ones. You know, I think about it and it's like, how do you show respect? Well, I'll listen to you. How do you show respect? Well, I'll nod my head at you. How do I show respect? You know, it's like, well, I'll accept what you're saying. You know, I'll give credibility to you. It almost is like the almost all encompassing for the other 6, or at least 3 or 4 more.
Yeah, it's appreciating the fact that I am interacting with another human being, which is the highest order on planet Earth. And that in itself, that positioning of the human being is a call for respect, to be respected, and then in turn to respect others.
So I think knowing. Go ahead, Sue.
I wasn't talking.
Or Sharon, I'm sorry, Sharon, what about you?
I think knowing the axioms as we've talked about them in the past few weeks, that automatically sets me up to respect everybody. If I don't agree with them or have different opinions, having that knowledge helps me to know that is their quality world, whatever they're doing, whether I agree with it or not. And that gives credence to what they're saying, whether I agree with it or not. And then I work, you know, it would be a matter of conversations, as Sue was talking about, being able to relate those differences and share and come to maybe an agreement or agree not to agree, as we have to do sometimes. So,
And so for 5 weeks, we did the axioms, and you may want to go back and look at that and look at
I
all
can
of those.
bring that up if you want. Mona, you want me to bring those up? Because they're right here if you want them.
Okay, okay, okay. And then what we did on that was Sharon and Sue broke it down into how it applies with lead management, or and how it works in the quality schools, as well as working with your family or your neighbors or whomever. And if we'll just read through these right quickly. The axioms are: the only person whose behavior we can control is our own. Oh, give me a break. Surely I can control you.
All we can, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All we can give or get from each other is information. How we deal with that information is our or their choice.
All long-lasting psychological problems are relationship problems.
The problem relationship is always part of our present lives.
What happened in the past that was painful has a great deal to do with where we are today, but revisiting this painful past can contribute little or nothing to what we need to do today for that important present relationship.
We are driven by 5 genetic needs: survival, love and belonging, power, freedom, and fun.
And we satisfy these 5 genetic needs by satisfying a picture or some picture that we have settled in our head that that's what I want.
All we can do from birth to death is behave. All behavior is total behavior and is made up of 4 inseparable components: acting, thinking, feeling, and physiology.
And I had a friend that said anytime he thinks about behavior, all he was quit. You know, as a kid growing up, and behave yourself. It was whatever you're doing, just quit it. So all total behavior is designated by verbs, usually infinitives and gerunds, and naming the component that is most recognizable. I made the comment to Sue earlier that she had used the word depressing, and anytime we add ing to a word, is bringing it into the now, so that we can see, oh, I can actually do something about whatever it is that because that verb is active and it's always present.
Right. All total behavior is chosen, but we have direct control over only the acting and thinking components.
Okay.
And I've always heard Sharon describe it as, and then the back wheels will follow along. It's a front wheel drive car.
right.
Right. Okay, so the next connecting habit is encouraging.
Getting there. There you go.
So what does it mean to encourage? Sharon?
Okay, to encourage would mean to share more of what you're talking about, sharing your ideas, your quality world, how you're choosing those behaviors. Any situation that you were doing, you're looking at that person's quality world and seeing how they're engaging that in what they're doing, and encouraging them and asking them the questions. How is this helping you? Is it working? What else could I do to support you? But it's always being there to support and helping move to a what I would call a positive interaction with others.
I guess couldn't it also be the cheerleader? I'm going to encourage you by rah-rahing you. It's like, you can.
You can
Come
go
on, hang in
definitely.
there. You can do it.
Right.
I
Right.
have, I have an example I think is good. I have a friend who was estranged from her daughter, her adult daughter, for a long, long time. And the daughter got married and had a baby. And during and they were as close as they could be, but they were still a little estranged. Anyway, she said that, sorry. Oh, I think I heard myself, a reverberation. So she began to, instead of nitpicking at her daughter, once the baby was born, she began to say to her daughter things like, "You've got this. You're a great mother. You'll figure it out. You're going to be you're going to be fine. You've done." So she didn't offer any mothering kind of yeah, 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 yeah. Instead, she was encouraging and empowering with her daughter. And my friend explained to me how she could almost visibly see on her daughter a change of her own daughter's behavior, reaction, where the daughter was not defensive.
Mhm.
And the daughter was accepting and thankful. "Oh, yeah, thank you for that, Mom." And I tried it with my own daughter-in-law to say that, "Oh, you're a good mother. You're going to figure this out, or you're going to be fine with this." And she gave me like the same kind of look of like, "Oh, wow, thank you." The encouraging can be more than flattering. It's kind of giving a bit of, "I have confidence in you," and to help them have confidence in themselves.
So actually, all of these connecting, caring habits are equally as visible as they are using words or actions.
Mhm.
Another one is listening. What does it
Want to
mean?
go down to listening? There's listening.
Okay, we'll go by your.
Well, do you want to go in?
Well, negotiating differences is good. That's kind of what you've already been talking about there with the child,
Mhm.
and giving compliments and negotiating the differences with the mom. So what else?
So about negotiating differences?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, I think you have to have the respect there first before two people can begin to negotiate, because they have to recognize that each person has value in whatever their difference is. And just like Diane was saying with her, "I see that you're a good mom," or you're respecting that information and then begin to work with it to share how you can come together. Oh,
And so maybe employing those connecting and caring habits, we would be the ones that would be listening first
Mhm.
to hear what the opposition might have to say.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're calling it the opposition. So it's really recognizing the fact that there are differences. What are the differences? Is the quality world picture the same, but our actions to get there are not the same? Is it our timeline that's different? Is it who we want to involve in whatever it is different? Is it the quality world is different? I want this, you want that. Like a number of us who were at the program committee meeting last night, and it was really interesting because we've got people who they don't want to just talk about topic, they want to talk about audience. We had people that were also talking about the fact that, well, we want to talk about the marketing and the materials, and it was like, okay, it was really an issue of negotiating differences. These are really good. You're just ahead of us right now. And here's what we're
Right.
thinking, and to a degree it was negotiating differences. To a degree, it became much more of a lead management sort of a facilitation, which was bottom line. Okay, I'm going to listen, but we're not going that way. Thank you for being ahead of the game, but we're not going that way. And then negotiating differences was, well, okay, if audience is just as important as topic, please do that. You can include that, but here's the list that still says topic. But it was really interesting in terms of trying to negotiate the differences when it becomes more lead management worthy.
Okay. So you want to put up the next one on the list?
I do. There's the next one.
Trusting. And now, what does it mean to trust? What does it mean to actually give someone the respect? I mean, that trusting, that's deep, that's heavy.
It
learning
is.
to trust. So what are your thoughts on that?
Interestingly enough, for quality schools, when we looked at trusting, we went back to David and Roger Johnson's cooperative learning work. And David is a social psychologist. I don't know if he's still practicing or not, but they would describe trusting as being open and sharing. And the only way that being a trusting individual, being open and sharing would work is if it was countered with trustworthiness, which was about being accepting and supporting, which is really interesting because, of course, it comes right up there. So trusting, being open and sharing, I can disclose who I am to you. I can trust you that you'll keep a confidence. Could be part of it.
Sharon, what's your take on trusting?
Right. I agree with all that Sue has said. And I think sometimes if you're familiar enough with this person, you've worked with them or the group long enough that they've come through with what they say they're going to come through, even if I haven't previewed it, I might trust them to go ahead with it. Right. Just because we've had that working relationship and sharing of ideas and things together.
And that goes hand
happens
in hand
life.
with the respecting.
Yes, right. And those things happen in life. Our schedules get terribly busy sometimes, and we don't have the time to communicate as much as we would like sometimes, type thing. But yeah, the trusting is deep. You're putting yourself out there that this person is going to do what's in your quality world. Yeah, and right. And that is going to follow through.
I wonder to what extent for trusting credibility, skill level is involved in it. So I think about it, when do we get to the point where we're not going to trust somebody enough to drive with them? When is to the point that we're going to trust somebody enough to actually do our shopping for us? Or we're going to trust somebody to, take care of our child, take care of our plants, take care of our house. Who are the people that you trust? And I think that comes down to credibility and capacity. So it is being open and sharing, but it's also trusting one's expertise. Like I think about it, I'm having trouble with my dryer, and I know it's got something to do with the venting going on. Now, interesting, I trusted the credibility of the heating, plumbing, air conditioning people who do work in my house. And interesting enough, they could have taken me for a complete total ride, and not done it. But the guy just looked and said, "We don't do that. We don't do that here." So it's like you have to call somebody else. We don't do that. So that's not now, whether he really had the expertise and it just wasn't on the list, I don't know. But he said, "No, you want to get somebody who specializes in this. Let me find you somebody."
So
Which then created trust to now say, do I trust his recommendation, or is it his brother-in-law that he's recommending? Who doesn't have any more skill than, but I trusted him. And so the guy's coming tomorrow.
right, let it prove itself or not. And then you go back up to those negotiating differences or whatever.
Well,
Okay,
you also look at it and say, why do we look at reviews? Do we trust the reviews on a given organization? Do you trust the reviews just even on a book? Do you trust the reviews on a consultant?
Depends on the source.
Right. And that's it. So do you trust that source? And isn't that the credibility piece? Who said that? Your sister or a client who has nothing to do with you except to see your expertise? It's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that brings up something I did last night. We found out that the funeral services we're driving to for Saturday are going to be Saturday morning. So we need to go Friday afternoon, Friday daytime. So we will be there in time. Well, then I started looking at motels in this smaller town and reading their reviews, like you said, and knowing what each of these type of motels were. Some of the reviews I didn't quite trust, type thing, they were in, and I may be wrong because I haven't been in them for a while. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I chose one that I did trust the reviews of and my knowledge of. So
with trust and all of these things we're talking about, I mean, I want to bring it back to relationships and bringing people closer to us. Trust in that sense is trusting your friend, your partner, your child to make a good decision. I remember raising my son we all, we know that when you have a teenager, and you give them the keys to the car, you're saying, I trust that you will be sensible. I'm having trust in you, so here are the keys. Rather than I'm not taking, you can't go, I don't trust you. You're going to do this. And then they probably will if you don't give them something.
Right.
So as far as these connecting habits, we should view them in terms of course of the relationship and how trusting is so much better than not trusting, and that how that brings people closer together rather than constantly doubting them. So doubt and mistrust, so example of trust in our lives with our friends and family. Yes.
It is interesting though, because it comes to the relationship piece, and I can be open and sharing with you, yet it also goes to the credibility capacity sense, so it's really twofold.
But also isn't trust, so I get it, people aren't their past, but past is prologue. So if the choices and behaviors that you've been displaying over time is one that does not give me cause to put trust in you, I feel like trust is an earned thing. The expectation that somebody else is going to meet our XYZs, if you haven't been showing that I can put trust in you, I'm not going to give you trust. You haven't earned it. If I just don't know you, and I just have a distrust for the entire humanity, that's a me problem. But if you're a stranger, there's not enough information from which I can judge. So the realism is, I don't know you enough to trust you.
To begin to connect and have
In the beginning, yeah.
relations. Yeah.
exactly.
And can I just ask one? Now, if our history has a bunch of disconnections and a bunch of times that you haven't shown up, but we continue to walk into the sword, and we have gotten here in year 10, year 15, and now we're halfway with the raising, and now we're trying to figure out, do you like me? Do I trust you? But mistrust and resentment has already built up. How do you move past the resentment to get them focused on the here and now? We've already, it's the past is the anchor that has been weighing them down, and yet they keep moving forward, and they get here. Some of them are like, it's past, we're already here, forget about that. But some are like, no, I don't trust you. How do you move past that?
A lot with that trusting and to respecting and encouraging. I know I had someone one time that was talking and was looking at that had not been trustworthy. Okay. And then made the comment to me, because we were talking about it, but there was 2 or 3 of us that was talking with them, and we're talking about, and the person just stood there and very boldly said, I don't do that anymore. And I mean, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and said then, and I know I smiled and I nodded my head and I said, thank you for sharing that with us. And I personally am going to watch for that change, because I had seen those negative responses so much before, I automatically look for them. So thank you for having the courage to speak up and let me know. And if they can't, then maybe we need to let them know. I'm saying that maybe because you are so frustrated with my commending you again to do something in a certain way, then I'm going to try. I'm going to begin to watch and see. I'm going to look for the good points as opposed to the negatives that I've been holding,
Mhm.
to see if that trust stands true. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the negotiating difference.
And
Right.
Rose, I would think at some point, if the trusting is one of your behaviors that is no longer meeting one of your needs, that you have to, then you have to decide, am I, then the person that has to decide if I'm going to continue to trust or if I'm going to step away.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming then a relationship that you keep getting, you trust, and it keeps getting broken, that at some point you've got to walk away because that's not going to meet your needs or your quality world pictures. Because a quality
totally
world
get it.
picture is I want people in my life that I can trust, and I'm willing to give them X number of chances. But after a while, it's like, yeah, I can't trust you. I need to, for myself, walk away.
And I
Diane?
think to Mona's, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Rose, please.
To Mona's point before is that and I hear you, Ms. Girardeau, is that one, that's a me thing, right? If I'm not trusting, that's a me thing. And if they're not giving me evidence, that's a them thing. But if they're saying, well, I have changed, and the other person, because of the resentment, isn't capable of seeing it, the work that has to be done is still here. I don't trust him. It's still not an indictment on him. It's an indictment on I don't trust. And that's the issue that I'm working through.
And then you'd have to say, then the person who's holding that resentment then has to look at resentment, holding on to the resentment versus letting go of the resentment. And then what do they want? Do they want to have that person in their lives? Or are they going to want things status quo where there's tension and friction in that relationship? So the resentment piece is their thing. And they've got to figure out if the resentment is helping them bring them closer or pushing them away, the other person.
Gotcha.
Or whatever.
I wonder to what extent it can be action specific. Like, is there any one thing you can trust your partner about?
Yeah. There's only one element that in this specific couple that I'm thinking of is that good parent, good lots of other things, but not emotionally connected, wanting to get to the sex without the connection. So husband feeling X way, wife feeling you don't love me, so they can't get past this barrier because the expectation, we want to move past this. I can't move past it. You haven't heard my story. So
there's so many levels to everything.
Right.
So
Right.
many levels.
Right.
And I know
Right.
that trusting and all those other 4 that's on the board at the moment works with addictions also. To begin to hold your addiction lightly. Because if you're, just so craving that addiction, whatever it is, whether it's fudge or something destructive, gambling, whatever it is, as long as you're holding on to it and you're wanting to get rid of it because you see it in your mind that it would be better if you could, if you'll hold on to it lightly, it has a tendency to rot away of its own or fade away of its own.
I was agreeing with everything that Rose and Diane have just brought up, and I was thinking about a very blunt question. Is holding on to your resentment helping you improve this relationship? And that's a value question for the person, because then they really have to think, is this the relationship I want or not? And if it's no, then they would back away. Yes, I want to, then how can I learn to let my resentment go and trust in baby steps, whatever the ways you all were talking about. But
I think that's definitely where we're at. Trying to help someone learn to let go of the resentment. To them, it feels like they are walking further into the sword, and I'm trying to guide that it is actually the opposite. It is not that you are continuing to accept. It is that, it's sort of some boundaries, but you're giving what you want to receive, this act of tonglen, this I'm giving the loving kindness that I want to receive in. And yes, at some point, if it continues with the old patterns, I will have to make a different choice at that time. But if
Okay.
I want to move forward this way, then I can at least give this a shot.
Let's go on to the next caring habit.
Mhm.
It's accepting. It's accepting. And to me, acceptance means it's the stopping point. Whether it is the fact that a person acquiesces and says, yes, I accept, and we'll understand each other and negotiate and blah, 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 or whether it's I'm walking away. It's accepting it. It brings a resolution. It brings a solving, as opposed to keeping it going, as we learn to accept it.
Mhm.
And, that may be real difficult to accept, because if you're wanting to control someone else,
Right.
then it's going to be keeping on as to trying to have them see where you're coming from, or to fix their problem, or to whatever. So it's that accepting the fact that you are a human being that does have infinite worth and value, even though there are some irritating qualities there. And it can begin to reconnect those relationships.
Well, is it also accepting that you are who you are, and I love you dearly. I don't like that you do this, but I still accept you for who you are. I think about my husband, who he was never one who was going to say, there wasn't going to be a lot of I love you. There wasn't going to be a lot of, he just didn't do that. He expressed his love in different ways, and it was accepting the fact that, okay, I love you, even though you're not a schmoozy romantic guy,
Exactly.
And not try and make him be that.
Right. Not try to change a person because what you'd really like for yourself.
He bought cute schmoozy cards, though. Who did?
Right.
Just a little bit, huh?
The thing of it is there are some redeeming qualities in all of them, regardless of the.
Couldn't say it, but showed it.
I think you can add negotiating differences to this with the accepting. And when Glasser talks about his marriage circle and the solving circle, whatever you want to call it, when you go in and you're negotiating these differences in the love and belonging and the all the needs in a relationship, and someone's really high on love and belonging and someone's really low, and I think accepting that the two cards, this is okay. I'm going to accept that this is big for him. This is a negotiating a difference that which I will accept that as a bringing me closer in to him, bringing me closer with him, rather than rejecting. I don't want the two cards. I want more. So I think that accepting includes accepting that when we're doing the negotiating and the compromising, that we accept the level, the extent that the person we're negotiating with can work with, and we accept that and we move forward.
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at on that first one with respecting. You're looking at each other's quality worlds and knowing where they come from and how to respect those and share and negotiate.
Yeah.
But we hear people talk about, I'll accept your apology. And can I accept their behavior? Can I accept their apology? Can I accept that this is who they are? I don't know. It helps me look at it. It's interesting. I have a nephew who's my brother's wife, my brother's son. So, and it's real interesting. He and his wife, they never send thank you cards. It's like I can send whatever I send. They never send a thank you card. It's like, okay, can I accept the fact that they don't ever send a thank you card? Well, they were here over the weekend because my sister-in-law's mother had passed away. And I mean, they live like in North Dakota. So they're not here a lot, but they're from here originally. Well, accepting wise, even though they never send thank you cards, and I accept the fact, okay, they just never send a thank you card. It was really interesting because my nephew, my sister-in-law said, John really wants to make sure that we see you a lot this weekend. Okay.
Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Okie dokie. Listening. So,
The statement I think we all know, but we fail to do a lot of time. Are we listening to hear what the other person is saying or listening for our turn to speak?
right.
And so that's kind of, I'll let's somebody else weigh in now, please.
I've got a question. So in the last session, there was a point where I talked about a couple who, she wanted her husband to hear all the different ways that he had failed her. And one of you said that that's something that she should bring into her session. But part of her grudge is that he does not know her sacrifice, that every time she has brought her story of pain to him, he has minimized it and diminished it. So she is not feeling heard. How does that get resolved with just bringing it to the therapist?
well, it doesn't necessarily, because there has to be so many other things that's a part of that too. Of being willing to heal their own self without someone else being the one that rubs the ointment in.
I think it's to address the inconsistencies, the fact that, over these decades, I've been walking into the sword and you have not made any changes. And one of his responses to her was all the different ways why he loves her. But every single thing he said was, you always put us first, the kids and this marriage. So everything that he's saying is confirming exactly what she feels, that I have to continue to give myself up in order to do this relationship. But he can't hear that part. So how does he hear that without her saying it?
But isn't he acknowledging it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like he is not acknowledging how much she is giving up. So she's at this point, and don't get me wrong, I understand the anger of it. She's at this point, she's like, I've been changing who I am, making myself smaller. You haven't had to do anything to change. And
Okay.
now, 12 years in, what are you willing to do to change?
And with enough trust with her, you could say, whose behavior can you control and who is choosing to do what you do? That's the bottom line. So if she wants to do those things, that's her choice. She can't control what he says or does in response.
Right.
If she doesn't like his response, she can choose to do a different behavior. Those are very harsh, and I would never counsel somebody that, that harshly, perhaps. But that's the crutch.
Okay,
And
let's go
there's
on with what's the final connecting habit? Supporting. So these are ways that we can to support. Matter of fact, kind of going backwards with that, as that is on the ultimate question from way back when. It started out with supporting. That was the number one. And then to encourage, and then to listen, and then to accept. And then you get down to trusting and respecting and negotiating differences. That the way that they were listed on the ultimate question is what I'm doing driving us further apart or keeping us closer together. So it's really worth thinking about all of these things. How can I support someone even though they're not supporting me? How can I encourage? How can I have a demeanor on my face that whenever I am saying something, even if I am sharing can I say it in a way that is not going to be real off-putting to them? It's that ultimate question. The way I am presenting it, the way I am working with this other individual, what's the end result? It's not all about me. It's about us as a family. It's about us as a couple. It's about us as a working together. It's about us as humanity as a whole. And what is I am doing? Am I pushing them away by my attitudes, by my facial expressions, by my dogma? Or is it drawing us together? Am I making a place there where they can come in and sit down and breathe and be okay with it? And we can then begin to negotiate some differences. So we'll go ahead and close out for today, and we'll continue the discussion if there's any that wants to be. So thank you. And Wendell's giving his round of applause. And thank you to everyone for being here, and many blessings.
Thank you.
Okay, the recording
Mr.
is.
Walker. I just want Mr. Walker's sign back there. I was just sending you an email.
I've got it. I want to